All right, Sue, how's everybody doing so far? We're about done we're done with everything. Everybody gets to go home soon. Take your time.
No, you can close the doors, leave those two out.
Yeah, they don't need, no, you're fine. You're confusing the part. Thanks for showing up. Appreciate it. So make sure you scan your QR code, get your CEUs and all that, and I like to have sort of a kind of a relaxed kind of presentation. So if you guys have any questions, just feel free to interrupt me at any time. I'd much rather have a dialogue than to just sit here and talk at you. So we're here to talk about selling electrification to homeowners. I'm Matt, that's me, believe it or not. And this is Sarah, believe it or not. We're both with Halco, and we are home solutions experts. We are the salespeople, the folks that actually come into the house and figure out what's going on and talk to the homeowners and come up with the solutions and figure out how to solve the problems. Show of hands, how many people in here are actually in sales? Okay, that's about what I figured. All right. Who's not with Halco? And put their hand back up.
Who's not with Halco and in sales?
Yeah, that's this and this. Okay.
Like two.
Come on in, everybody. Plenty of seats up front.
Well, this is a presentation about selling, so hopefully you'll still get something out of it.
Yeah.
But.
So this is kind of a, the broad overview of our chat is to basically, how do we talk to homeowners about these things? This benefits you from a sales perspective, but it would also benefit you from, whatever else you happen to be doing, vendors, hub folks, NYSERDA folks, whatever you're here for. It might give you an idea and to help try to better understand what we do on a daily basis when we go into homes and actually have these one-on-one conversations with the homeowners. Basically, you talk about how to talk to them, find and address some of the technical challenges in electrification of a home, and how to deal with overcome objections and basically get the homeowner to buy in and potentially you spend the money, because at the end of the day, the whole idea of this whole thing is to to better homes, to electrify. And some of that means customers got to spend money. And at the end of the day, if nobody's spending money, nobody's making money. So this is sort of the I'm biased. I'm a salesperson. I think this is the most important part of the process. So sales 101. Sure.
Can you just define electrification for us so we all know what your definition of that is?
Yeah, absolutely. So so when somebody says electrification, it's basically switching from fossil fuels to a full electric solution in a home, and we're going to touch on all those different aspects. But for space heating and cooling, domestic hot water, cooking, laundry, electric vehicles, solar. So basically, anything that requires some form of energy, the source of said energy is going to be electric. So we go into a house, we sit down, and we ask the folks, why'd you call us? Why are we here? You have to ask that conversation. You can't just say, oh, okay, I saw on the appointment that you want to talk about heat pumps. Great, let's talk about heat pumps. I don't know why I'm there. I'd much rather hear it from the person that called us than to just assume third hand why I'm sitting at their kitchen table. Listen to that conversation. The homeowner needs to talk to you. They're the ones that are making the decisions. They're the ones that are showing up. They're the ones that are opening your home to them. They want to. Homeowners like to talk usually, but you got to pay attention. You got to parrot back to them. You got to repeat back to them. You got to build that rapport. At the end of the day, if you're not building rapport, you're not selling anything. Your job is to convince these folks that, hey, you're worthy of them spending their hard-earned money with your company, with you, and Otherwise, we're not the only game in town. There's plenty of people that can do these things, or they don't have to do them at all. So, why are we here? We're not trying to be slickster salespeople. We're just trying to figure out what their problems are and address them, and come up with those good comprehensive solutions. Obviously, ask open, probing questions, open-ended questions. Otherwise, you're not going to get the information. Yes or no is not going to get you there. You need to kind of pull that out of folks. And why did you call us? Why are we here? What's the problem? What's the pain points? What issues are in the house? You gotta get information out of them. Build an accomplished list. It's basically just putting together a list of the problems. If somebody's just rattling off issues, you take note of that. Okay, all right, Bobby's bedroom is cold. All right, Bobby's bedroom's cold. But it's not just my electric bill is high. Okay, cool, electric bill's high, your gas bill's high. Okay, but what is the problem? Why are those bills high? Why is this room cold? These are things you want to kind of come up to put together and have an idea of what's going on in the house.
And that way you can come back to it at the end too, to say, okay, here I'm presenting what I'm sure is going to solve this issue. And then you can go back through and remind them why they're interested in what you're talking about.
This big one right here, sell solutions, not prescriptions. So I mentioned Bobby's bedroom's cold. Well, there's a good chance the attic, you find out the attic is poorly insulated. You're not selling to insulate the attic.
Bags of cellulose.
Bags of cellulose, exactly. You're selling make Bobby's bedroom warm, because that's their problem. Their problem isn't the attic is under insulated. Their problem is their house is uncomfortable. And your house doctor, your job is to figure out what the problem is and diagnose it and come up with a good solution. You want to talk about that a little bit? Home evaluation?
Yeah, sure. So after we have a good sense of what it is that the homeowner's looking to accomplish, in this presentation, we're talking about moving people away from potentially what they've always known, what they know has worked, towards something that they're a little unsure about. And part of making them sure that what you're proposing is going to work is you being sure that it's going to work. And so that's where getting an in-depth look at, okay, what is going on in the attic, walls, basement, or crawl space? What do we have to do to seal this place up to a point where I'm 100% sure that what I'm proposing is going to work? And especially when it comes to heat pump technology in particular, oftentimes we are taking out a 100,000 BTU gas burning furnace, and we need to know that the house is going to be able to be served by just 48,000 BTUs. So obviously, like I said, checking out the entire shell of the building. And then hopefully everyone here is aware that the blower door test is really key in this too, because you have to figure out, that's a key metric when you're doing your heat loss, heat gain, is to know how much air change there is. And in fact, we can be pretty sure when we're running that blower door test at the time how much insulation they're going to need to do to be able to get to a point where electrification is going to make any kind of sense. And the sooner you get to that point of knowledge, the sooner you can get them on board with taking on all the steps that it takes to get to that electrification part.
Can you, if you cover later, that's fine, but can you tell us what you're classifying or what you're selling in electrification? Like what services you're selling in that department?
Yeah, actually, I got a whole list of them coming through.
Okay.
So I'll be able to go through all that there. You got to know what's going on in the house. You can't just walk in and be like, you need about 60,000 BTUs because I looked it up on Zillow and the house is 2,500 square feet and it's built in 1990, and that just sounds right. We don't guess. Rules of thumb: don't apply, especially in the world of electrification and heat pumps. You need to do the work. You need to do a manual J. You need to do a manual S. You need to figure out what this place needs. And we're not putting in heat pumps in uninsulated, old, drafty houses. Heat pumps do not work like fossil fuel furnaces. Fossil fuel furnaces are a lot more forgiving because you get a lot of BTUs like that. You don't get that with heat pumps. There's a reason we don't just slam in heat pumps all willy-nilly and call it a day. If you're not doing the work, you're not doing the homeowner. You're doing the homeowner disservice by not doing the work. Health and safety is paramount. When we do these evaluations, we're not necessarily going electrifying right away and catching everything. So we've got fossil fuel appliances in the house. We've got furnaces, water heaters, ovens, dryers, things that burn and produce carbon monoxide. So we're checking all that stuff. If it's burning fuel, we need to know that it's safe. We cannot leave an unsafe appliance in a house. And sometimes that means we don't do the work. If we have a situation, and we run into this all the time, and we'll except my next slide. Yeah, so I don't know how many of you, if I were to say to you guys in this room, this water heater fails draft, who doesn't know what that means, honestly? Okay. Perfect. All right, that's fine. Let me explain it. So real quick explanation. Natural draft water heater, which is the one with this dome on the top, the way it works is you got a fire on the bottom of the tank. It heats the water, and then right through the middle of that tank is the exhaust. You burn gas. You produce products of combustion. It's got to go through the vent, and it's got to go up through the metal flue into the chimney. At any time, if for some reason that hot, wet air that's coming out of the top of the water heater cannot get all the way outside, it's going to cool, it's going to condense, and it's going to fall back down the chimney, okay? So what happens is it's got nowhere to go but right back out here. So now I got 300 plus degree air coming to the top of that water heater, and this little plastic grommet on the hot water side, in this case, it's usually blue on the cold water side, that's plastic that melts. 300 degree air will melt plastic very easily. You go into a house and you see that tells you that this water heater is unsafe. Doesn't mean it's unsafe right this second. Doesn't mean it's unsafe all the time. It just means at some point in its lifespan, it didn't work the way it was supposed to. There's a lot of reasons for that. The water heater itself is probably fine. There's probably nothing wrong with the machine. It's the venting, and a lot of times that can't be properly corrected, so that needs to be addressed. NYSERDA, Halco, and any contractors worth their salt will not do work in a house where there's an unsafe water heater, specifically a water heater, because that hot air that's coming out of that vent has two things: water vapor and carbon monoxide. That CO is too high, people die. So there's a reason that sometimes we have to walk away. Sometimes we say, if we can't fix this water heater, I can't fix anything else in the house. That's why health and safety is 100% needs to be addressed right off the get. But it's not just products of combustion. We talked about atmospheric vented appliances. Furnaces, atmospheric vented furnaces have a similar problem. They're just a little sometimes harder to detect. You actually have to test it. Check for gas leaks, signs for mold, mildew, asbestos, wet basements, and then you evaluate the electrical service to make sure it's safe. But we know what mold is. I don't think I have to explain that to anybody. But you find mold in an attic, mold in a basement, mold inside the house, you need to find out why. Why is this happening? This mold just doesn't happen. There's a causes for it, and it could be a variety of different things. It could be external factors, it could be internal factors. You don't know. That's why you have to kind of determine and figure it out. And then, of course, high CO, when you're testing a gas appliance, 1,800 ppm, that'll kill somebody. Now, that doesn't mean that's what's in the house. It just means what the appliance is producing. So, again, all goes into evaluating the house.
So, Matt, real quick.
Yes, sir.
I think that's a good topic to go over very quickly when you're talking about doing that evaluation, because we hear it all the time. How are you two approaching the customer says, well, I had 2 other contractors in here and they didn't make a single mention of my water heater failing. he was in here and gave me a heat pump quote, or he was in here and gave me a gas furnace quote, and he or she never said a word about it. So
Yeah, I can say, like, I would just back up a little bit from that point. I try to get ahead of that in the initial talk with the customer about what it is that they're hoping to accomplish. Okay, we get through all the questions. We have a good list of things they hope to accomplish. And at the end, I'll say, if I find anything having to do with health and safety, durability, are these things that you would like me to bring to your attention? And so, right before even finding anything, I don't even know if there is anything wrong in that regard. I've already gotten their permission to bring it up, and that helps a lot. And hopefully, by the time I'm offering solutions to problems, they can see that what we're doing is a lot different than a lot of contractors are doing, that I am looking very thoroughly at the whole house.
And I would go one step further. In my instance, I'd say, okay, I explain what we're doing, how the house evaluation is going to go, and I will tell them, if I find something unsafe, I will tell you, and just so you're aware. And if it is a problem, and I'll explain it to them. I've had that water heater conversation 1,000 times, standing right in front of the water heater with the homeowner, saying, do you see what's happening here? This is not right. This is not how it's supposed to be. And you got to be blatantly honest with them. And to your question, how do you deal with, the last guy didn't tell me that? Well, that's how you deal with it. You tell him. You explain to him. It's like, okay, I understand that the other guy didn't, but I'm not the other guy. I'm here for a reason. This is what I found, and this is what needs to be addressed. Any question?
Yeah, how long do your evaluations take?
It depends. It depends on what we're there for and what we're looking at. I mean, a basic house, if all you're doing is just data collection, an hour, maybe 2. But if you're, at the same time you're having conversations with the customers, you're explaining things. I mean, I could spend 20 minutes talking about a water heater and have done nothing else. So it varies a lot. Every house is different.
Include the blower door, or are you doing that later? Are you coming back?
Blower door is usually the last thing we do, but we do it at the same time. It's everything's done in the same initial visit, as long as we've got the time and we can accommodate. There are. I have a helper, so I kind of get through stuff a little quicker. Sarah, I know, does it on her own. How long does it take?
Yeah, I mean, there's different sales approaches that you can take with each different customer. I mean, there is the approach of doing a quick look over the house, looking for those kind of deal breakers. Is there, all the things that we just mentioned? And then you can get to a point where you're saying, okay, here's a ballpark price of what we're looking at. How much, engage the interest level. If they're a no, get out of my house, then you can do that. If they're a maybe even, then let's go and do all the further testing. But at least they're not still waiting on the edge of their seat. Like, what is this gonna do to my wallet? That's the approach I take, in all honesty. And usually they're surprised at how much they can get done for the price that we can offer, given all of the incentives and everything out there. I'm kind of banking on that my ballpark pricing and what I can offer them, that they're impressed with what they've seen so far in the visit, and that they will give me that permission. Yeah, let's go ahead and do the whole assessment, which usually is in the tune of 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah,
depending on the house.
And it's the challenge you run into is, especially if somebody calls up, hey, I'm interested in a heat pump, or just I need a new furnace, right? You got to take the time. Yes, there's a bridge things you can do that kind of move things through a little further. But if you're doing a detailed assessment analysis on a house, that takes time. That's a conversation to be had. We try to have that conversation ahead of time when the appointment is scheduled, so they're at least aware, and I'm not surprising them. But I'll have that same conversation as I said, look, we're going to be here for a couple of hours. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what we need to do to get you to where you want. Because every time you walk into a house, the first thing somebody wants to know is, how much is this going to cost? And you have to, it's tricky to navigate because people don't like to be sold to. So it's the challenge you run into sometimes is they see you as a salesperson, right? And they see, okay, this guy just wants my money. He's going to be in and out in 15 minutes. Not the case. And I've told folks that. I'm like, look, you asked me for my honest opinion as an expert, and to advise you. That's why you call us. To do that, here's what I need to do to make sure that what I'm proposing to you is the right thing for you and for the house. Could I ballpark something in 15 minutes? Absolutely. I do it all the time in my head. I can put it together as I'm going through. I'm like, okay, this is probably what I'm looking at. But I've been surprised by the time I get through everything and realize, okay, I was off. But you're giving them the value of your time and expertise to go through their house. If they already knew this stuff, they wouldn't have called you. If they could do it themselves, they wouldn't have called you. Some people can, and that's fine. Some people just want to be not reassured, but they want. Some people know, and they want to hear you tell them. Thank you, validate, appreciate it. Yeah.
What do you and the homeowner that says, here's the basement, see on the way out, you can go over with the other three, I've got a Zoom meeting and I'll, they don't want to engage with you, I guess.
The director type.
The director type. Here's what I would say is, okay, how much time do we have to chat? Because I would like to have a conversation with you to address and figure out exactly what you're looking for. If we don't have that time, great, let's find a better time that's more convenient for you. Because could I handle that? Yeah. It's not a problem. If somebody's just looking for a quick and dirty, I can handle it. But I have on many occasions been able to pull them away and keep them with me while we're going through this. And a lot of it is having the conversation while you're walking around the house, because if they're listening, they don't tend to wander away too much. But that happens. There's no like this is how you do it. Every person is different. Every personality is different. The director type, as Sarah said. But everybody wants, they're there for a reason. You're there for a reason. It's just a matter of kind of navigating that. It's not, it can be a pain in the butt, but, it's doable. Let's see, building rapport, building your value. And this is all, honestly, all these things are done fairly quickly and all kind of at the same time. Mm-hmm. So you're building rapport with the customer, you're building your value, you're telling them your story, you're telling them about you, you're telling them about the company you work for, you're telling them about the services we offer, everything we do beyond this conversation of me just slapping a heat pump or slapping a furnace into your house or insulating your attic. Let me tell you what else we can do, what else why we should be the ones that you're spending your money with. Obviously, this is basic home performance stuff. You explain stack effect. Use thermal imaging. This is a phenomenal tool. People always get a kick out of it because it's not something most folks usually just have a chance to play around with. But give them the infrared camera and tell them to walk around. Say, hey, go find all the yellow spots and tell me, all the heat you're losing. Find all these cold spots and tell me all the air infiltration areas of the house. When you're evaluating a house, these are our minimum goal expectations, are properly insulated attics, minimum code requirements. But hey, if you can get to a full R60, great. The basement, what can we do? Do we have to seal up these rim joists? We got an old stack stone foundation we got to seal up because it's leaking, like crazy, like a sieve. I've reduced blower doors by 1,000, 1,500 CFM just by foaming the foundation walls because they just leak like crazy. Those old stone foundations, they may look nice and sturdy, but they're leaking like crazy. And obviously exterior walls, make sure you're probing your walls. Don't assume the walls are insulated. It's a fair assumption to make, but especially with all the old houses we have in New York, there's a fair to middling chance that there's nothing in those walls. I've gone into houses that are 100 years old and they don't have a lick of insulation, the attic, the basement, the walls. And you ask them, like, how do you not just, it's just one of those things, like how to get this far without anybody catching that. And of course, air changes. You need to figure out what your air changes are. You need to do your blower door. If you don't know how to do a blower door, learn how to do a blower door. It is an absolutely non-negotiable thing because you can't assume air leakage because you can't necessarily see where all this air, where it's leaking. If you're just guessing, you're guessing, and you're again not doing the right thing. 7 air changes is good for retrofit. 3.5 is new building code. If you can get to 7, it's considered. It's not fantastic. It's not awesome, but it's workable. If you can get better, even better. And of course, on the other side of that is a house that's too tight. Then you've got different issues to deal with humidity control and air exchange.
Folks, just to note that I forget the number, but 3.5 is close to meeting conventional ventilation.
Yeah, I think 3 is required for air exchange.
It's on the edge.
Yeah. So anytime we do new construction, we're putting in an air exchange system anyway. Just new building practices, just the house is going to be tight, no matter what.
Matt, when you do spray foam against an old stone foundation, do you put a drainage plane against there first, or do you just let the foam go in there?
Depends. If it's above grade, it's not usually a water or moisture issue, so we're just going for air sealing. Below grade, if there's an existing water moisture issue, absolutely. You want something to be able to deal with that, but okay, you put a vapor barrier or drainage barrier against the wall, you foam it. Okay, now what have you done? You're just sending all that moisture and water back down. Now you have to deal with a water infiltration problem and basement waterproofing.
Snowballs.
Yeah.
But do you do that in combination with doing some kind of a drainage system?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Some pond perimeter drainage.
Yeah.
There's some houses you go into, they've never had water, it's never been an issue, it's not a problem. You foam the wall, you seal it up, and that spray foam gets in all the little cracks and crevices and buttons it up. But yeah, I mean, we're not. That's another thing that goes back to health and safety. You go into a house and you find a wet basement, you need to deal with that wet basement before you tighten things up, because you will guarantee you will make a problem a hell of a lot worse by just ignoring it. So, and it's another thing too. I mean, I'm biased. I work for a company that can fix all these problems. And sometimes I forget when I go to these conferences that the folks I'm talking to don't do everything. So it's a challenge, a much bigger challenge. Like for me, I go into a wet basement, I can fix that. And then I can air seal your house, and I can fix that water heater, and I can put it in.
You don't have to walk away and say, "Get that fixed."
Yeah. Call me when that gets fixed, or hey, call this guy. I can recommend him. He can deal with this, and then when that's done, I'll come back and do with this. It's an advantage we have, and we are really spoiled because of it. There's not a thing I don't want to say not a thing. I'm sure there are, but there's things that most things, if there's a problem in the house, we can fix. Okay. So these are just the basics as far as electrification goes. Domestic hot water, heating, cooking, laundry. Those are really the only things that are going to use fossil fuels in the house, short of lawn care equipment and things like that. But
Or a stove or something.
yeah, so anything that's not physically in the house. So, if we want to electrify, the idea is to remove these fossil fuel appliances. Electrical service, we'll talk about electrical services for a bit. Most homes, if you're trying to electrify a house, are going to need a full 200 amp service. Some have them, some don't. If you go into a lot of these older houses, especially in the cities that are predominant, have had gas for a century, and these houses are built with simple 100 amp services. That's fine. Lights, TV, refrigerator, washing machine. Those don't use a lot of power. 100 amp service is totally fine with that. If you're trying to get heat pump water heaters, electric range, electric dryer, electric vehicles, 100 amps isn't going to cut it. There are some newer products coming on the market that are designed for load shedding that might help with that. But typically, if you can do a simple service upgrade, 200 amp overhead service upgrade is fairly straightforward to do. And you're likely going to have to upgrade that electrical service. Now, this right here is a National Electric Code load calculation. There's basically for electrical demand in a house, just like anything else, you can fill out a load calc sheet, and it'll do the math for you, and it'll pretty much tell you how many amps you need for what you're putting into this house. If might need to go bigger, we do see this from time to time. We've had to put 400 amp services in residential houses. It's not common. 200 amps is typically plenty, but every once in a while you need something bigger, and it's usually larger houses that have more appliances and stuff. Yeah.
Matt, have you experimented with any load shedding panels like maybe
Span. Yeah, so we haven't, I don't think we've done any in a house. We put one in our Ithaca shop to kind of play with it. I don't know if it's really had to do anything.
We have 100 of them. So NYSERDA is actually going to be using us to try to say, okay,
You've installed 100 of them?
no, we have 100 that we're ready to install.
I'll take one.
It's in the works.
It's definitely in the works.
Yeah, so it's
Curious to know the feedback when you guys proposed it.
yeah. I mean, I can tell you, I know it's like Brittany said, there's a NYSERDA sort of pilot, right? There can be challenges with that. A lot of times that actually would end up costing more than a full service upgrade, but certainly have their applications where we've got an underground service and we need to trench 300 feet to the transformer or something, and it's just astronomical to make that work. Or we've got a situation like mobile homes are great. So, say you're in a mobile home park and all the meters are on a pedestal, on the other side of the park, and you've got to cross 18 different lots to get to yours to upgrade the service, or we need to get the utility involved to set a pole to move the service. So there's definitely applications for that. It's just a matter of what makes the most amount of sense.
What is it that it does? Does it ramp up startups or something?
The span panels. So basically what they'll do is you program it to prioritize load. So for example, you've got your heat pump running, and maybe it'll keep the dryer off,
Yeah.
or it'll just prioritize depending what it'll shut this off while the water heater's running. When the water heater comes to temp, it'll shut off and it'll turn the other thing back on. So it just balances so you can't overdraw something, and that's all part of when you set it up and you program, you tell what circuits to prioritize.
Do you find the NEC code is just over conservative? So do you, because I just one quick story, I had a net zero energy house that I built for myself, and the NEC code said I needed 400 amps.
Yep.
Everything was electric, everything. I turned on every single circuit in the house, the heat pump, the water heaters, the heat pump dryer, all of the heat pumps. I put them in test mode so that they were firing the whole time. I had some supplementary electric.
Is it a large house?
I'm sorry?
Is it a large house?
I mean,
How many?
It was about 3,800 square feet. So I don't know if
That's-
that's large or not large.
That's where
Very
it
large,
throws things off, in my experience.
What do you think it drew when I had every single circuit on?
Probably not. Well, you do tripping breakers if it drew too much.
That's what they're going for.
Yeah. So
Understood.
At the same time, what do you think?
At the same second.
Understood.
because the initial obviously.
Amps.
Yeah.
Because the initial startup load is different than the run loads.
But the NEC should be smart enough with the inverter-driven technology that it's very rare that something's going on or off.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't think the current calculators kind of take that into
Code is
account.
probably from like 100 years. Like the basic theory hasn't changed, but I mean, I don't think the code has.
Yeah, so there's definitely you're 100% right. There's like any calculations, there's going to be some fudge. There's going to be some best guesses designed in the software in the calculations. They're never going to be 100% dead on. And I use my own house for example. I have an all electric house. I've done that same calculation. I need almost 300 amps of power. I've got 2. And I've never had an issue. But I know that, but I also understand that not everything is going to run at once. And when you do factor in, inverter technologies, that brings it way down. But yeah, it's a challenge. It's a juggling act because, a heat pump water heater doesn't need the whole 4,500 watts because that's for the auxiliary heaters, so. It depends.
It's one big puzzle
It is. It's not 100%
Yeah.
straightforward.
with a lot of moving pieces.
Just a picture of electrical service, old, new. You see fuses, you're not electrifying that house. I'm sure it works fine, but
Not
old
before
60 amp
fixing
fuses. Yeah, this house has 5 circuits, or and this was in a mobile home. That's just a small. I think that's just a little 50. But if you're looking at electrical services, I mean, you might have a 200 amp service, but the thing could be 50, 60 years old. And you look at the drop outside, and the insulation is rotted off because the sun has just been baking on it for half a century. It might be time to update those. Also, I don't think we have I didn't put it in here, but you've got old electrical panels from manufacturers that have been discontinued, that have been recalled, that are fire and safety issues. The old stab locks, Federal Pacific, anything that's has a problem should be addressed. If we go in and we find one of these old panels, even though it might be 200 amps, but it's an old discontinued panel from the 70s or 80s, that's getting changed out. I mean, we're not going to even attempt to plug into that because it's not safe. There's a reason these things have been recalled. There's a reason they are not around anymore. Domestic hot water. So again, we're talking about electrification. We're talking about efficiencies. Not every house is a good fit for a heat pump water heater. But as far as electrification goes, we all know straight electric resistance isn't the most efficient thing, but if you're trying to electrify specifically and you can't put in a heat pump water heater, like you're in a mobile home, for example, or you're in a house without a basement, a house without a crawl space, or some sort of utility space that you can commit and make a heat pump water heater work, then a simple electric water heater will do the trick. Again, strictly talking about how to get fossil fuels out of the house. Heat pump water heaters.
There's a question in the back.
Oh, where?
The new 120 volt water heaters, heat pump water heaters, are making their way out of the market.
Yeah.
Have you had a chance to work with those yet?
Put in 2, because we had to. Because we were in a situation where we had a 100 amp service, and it was a nightmare to try to do a service upgrade. So we had to trim down our electrical usage on the NEC calculation, even though a 240 volt would have been fine. On paper, we had to do that. So we put in basically the same state water heater, but with the 110 plug. So the 110 heat pump water heaters just don't have the electrical auxiliary built in. Some of them do, but most of them don't. It's just the heat pump itself.
Gotta have low use.
Yeah, so that is not something you're not putting one of those in a house that's got 6 kids in it, that's using taking 5 showers a day. Any heat pump water heater would struggle with that. But that goes right to this one. How much hot water do you need? I've used the calculations online that the manufacturers have, and they are very generous with the amount of hot water these things can produce. Mm-hmm. If you got a family of 4, a 50-gallon heat pump water heater is going to struggle, even with the auxiliary. So you got to make sure you're sizing these things correctly, because that's another, a no heat, somebody calling and saying I'm cold because my heater's not working. The next worst one is I ran out of hot water. Or I was taking a shower, it got cold. Or I'm the 3rd person in and I have no hot water, I'm taking a cold shower. Nobody's going to live like that. So that's why it's so important to make sure we're putting in the right thing. And sometimes that means going into a big 80-gallon tank, or some sort of supplemental storage. Obviously, heat pump water heaters,
The one thing I'm more rated for down south for the incoming water is a little warmer than colder water.
Yep.
So that's why
Makes a lot of
see a
sense.
lot of 110 up here.
Yeah, so that's another thing too. It's how much do you have to raise that incoming water temperature? If you're down south, you can stick it in your garage. You're not worried about something freezing. Do we have enough airspace, utility space? Like I said, these heat pump water heaters is really meant for a basement. It's meant for an unconditioned, passively heated, semi-conditioned space. I say that, and I have a heat pump water heater in my finished basement in my laundry room. It doesn't bother me.
But they're not
some people are
silent
more
either.
sensitive. Yeah, they can be noisy. The new ones have gotten a lot quieter, but they're still a thing, an appliance in your house that's going to make noise. Obviously, a heat pump water heater is a lot more efficient than a traditional electric water heater, to the tune of 2 to 3 times less energy for the same amount of hot water. And again, what does it say? Great for mobile homes. Oh, sorry.
The electric,
On
regular
the wrong
electric
screen.
one.
So a regular electric water heater is great for a mobile home. They do make split type water heaters. They tend to be a bit more costly, and a lot of the situations where those might work well, the cost kind of puts it out of the range of possibility, and there aren't too many options out there right now. Talking about domestic hot water real quick, these are some cost comparisons to the different types of of water heating, from a heat pump water heater to a propane, just regular storage, nothing fancy, atmospheric vented water heater. And you can see our costs are pretty significant. So not a big savings over natural gas, but it's something. So when somebody says, what's the most efficient way to heat your water, it is a heat pump water heater, assuming all the other boxes are checked.
Excluding ground source.
Excluding ground source.
Excluding ground source water heating, I mean.
You want to talk about this one?
Sure.
Go.
Yeah, so I mean, when we say heat pumps, that's actually a big umbrella term, and you can do ground source or air source heat pumps. A lot of what we've been talking about, and I think a lot of what's been covered at this conference in general, is the air source heat pumps. But basically, if you start with the temperature of the ground as opposed to the temperature of the air, then you gain a lot of efficiency. And really anything that you can do with the air source heat pumps, you can do with the ground source heat pumps too. It's just a matter of figuring out the cost and benefits and just what the homeowner can accommodate at their home and in their budget.
So different ways you can heat and cool your house: forced air systems, ductless, hydronic. Those work great with ground source, geothermal, as long as they're meant for it. Same thing with air source, ductless, ducted, hybrid, dual fuel systems. You can do hybrid systems with Geo too. And when I say hybrid, that means you're still utilizing a gas system for some of the space heating. So not necessarily all of it. The heat pump is covering a lot of it, but it just isn't designed, built, or sized for the entire load. We used to do hybrid systems before all the clean heat rebates came out, when air source heat pumps were still very high cost. By comparison, we would do a lot of these hybrid dual fuel systems, high efficient gas or propane furnace tied with a more traditional air source heat pump, and then they would just switch over when the temperatures came to the right point. They're good solutions for unique situations, I guess. Obviously, geothermal or ground source is the most efficient way to heat and cool your home. 2 to 3 times more energy efficient than any other heating system. It's going to last a heck of a lot longer, 25, 30 plus years. The ground loop is going to last 50 or more. The most comfortable, the most balanced, can be paired with hydronics with certain considerations. And if anybody wants to, I think next year I'm going to do a geothermal class here.
Does anyone in here install ground source heat pumps?
Ooh.
We don't have to spend a whole lot of time there.
So they're very high efficient. They work very well. They're just a little bit more complex. Lowest cost of operation, lowest CO2 emissions, highest initial cost of install. So it's one of those high investment initially, but it's a long-term over the course of the lifespan of the system. If you're replacing a high-cost fuel, then you get a pretty healthy cost payback. This is actually just a picture. This is William. He lives in Fayetteville. If anybody wants to go see him, I'll give you his number. So we put in this is just a picture of a ground source heat pump we installed for space heating and domestic hot water. in a historical home in Fayetteville. We actually won the NYGO Top Job Award for this a couple years back for innovative design and implementation, and I'm proud to say I helped design this system. I just wanted to show this just to show that you can convert pretty much anything using geothermal as long as the numbers are right and we can actually make it work.
Matt, I think you had a question.
Yes. Hi. Yeah.
I just want to ask, you guys get calls about like the tax credit amounts coming in lower than expected with clients?
No, it's a percentage.
Luckily, no. We also really try not to promise anything having to do with the tax credits. It's all just talk to your advice, for your financial advisor. Anything that we put on our contracts, it says very clearly this is not a guarantee.
Yeah, we are not tax experts, and we print that on the contracts. We don't want those questions because we're not. But as far as your question, amounts, tax credit, the federal tax credit with geothermal and solar is 30% of the project cost. No ambiguity there. It's just a calculation. It's just a number. There are rebates, the clean heat rebates and stuff. Those could vary a little bit depending on exactly how everything is designed and put together. But again, that's all. We figure all that out ahead of time. So there's no surprises later.
Yeah, we try to help with the hubs, but we've got some clients who didn't understand refundable versus non-refundable. So if they had kids, they get that first, and they have less to claim.
Halco is not a qualified tax expert. Ask somebody who's qualified. But yes,
And you can just say the same thing.
yeah, and it's really at
frankly,
the end of the day. I mean, that there's
probably the best.
yeah. Because you don't want to give somebody the wrong information. You don't want to mislead them.
Yep.
But you want to be honest with them. Say, look, you're talking about your taxes. I don't do your taxes. I'm not an accountant. I want nothing to do with that. Here's the information I can give you. From there, you take it to somebody that, do you have somebody who does your taxes? When they say yes, I say, perfect. Give them this. They'll figure it out.
Do you do, on the installations of your geo, when you're heating domestic water, do you grab any of that de-superheat heat? Like, does it have a
Yeah.
de-superheat? Yeah.
So this one is unique. This is a dedicated 2-ton water-to-water heat pump connected to a storage tank.
So it has its own well?
It is 100% domestic hot water. No, it shares the same ground loop. It prioritizes, so when this kicks on, these will turn off until this comes to temp. It doesn't take typically very long. But again, this is 100% domestic hot water. We could have, if we wanted to get and steal that little bit of extra heat from the de-superheaters, we could. We didn't because we already had a source. So
And how many wells was that?
this one was 3 450-foot wells.
And do you do your own drilling?
No, that would pay somebody to do that.
But everything else?
Excavating, yes.
Excavation.
If it's going to be the
yeah.
horizontal, yes, but not the well
Do
drilling.
you do horizontal?
Oh yeah, we prefer. Well, we will try to do a horizontal ground loop first because we can do it ourselves. We've got all the excavation equipment and materials, so we'd rather be. Otherwise, we have to rely on a driller. That's one, going to be a lot more expensive, but two, we have to have them do it. When we can control it in house, it's a lot easier to manage.
Nice.
Air source heat pumps. So just ground source takes the heat from the ground. Air source takes the heat from the air. Pretty straightforward. But at the end of the day, it's the same machine. It's the same technology. It's just a compressor and refrigerant. That's all it is. So obviously, air source heat pumps are going to be a lot less costly than ground source compared to high-cost fuels like oil and propane, electric resistance. Usually about 50% less to operate. Varies depending on the cost of the fuel and the electricity. I didn't put this on here, but air source heat pumps against natural gas will not save anybody any money. Don't tell people that.
It's on there.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, look at that. I can't read. I didn't update this slide. A couple years ago, it was probably close. There's a chance you could equal it out. With current utility costs and gas and electric costs, an air source heat pump is not going to save money. If somebody wants to switch from natural gas to a heat pump, the conversation has to be had. Just so you know, this isn't going to save you money. Is that why you want to do it? If that's the case, I tell them, honestly, I could put in a higher efficient gas furnace. I could put in a hybrid system. I could put in a dedicated cold climate air source heat pump.
We can make sure to do all the shell improvements and bring bring your total usage down of how much heat this place needs. And there are lots of reasons that people would still want to go to a heat pump, even if it's not for the sake of energy savings. But they just need to know all the information and make their own decision on that.
Yeah, if somebody wants to make a decision to remove fossil fuels from their home because of health and safety concerns, environmental concerns, personal decisions, they're putting up solar and they want to be able to run it anyway, that's fine. The second somebody says, yeah, I want to do it to save money, you're not going against natural gas. I'll give you other options that could help save you some money, but if all you're trying to do is save a buck, it ain't going to happen with a heat pump. So those are decisions that have to be made
Against natural gas.
Against natural gas. Oil and propane, electric, absolutely. Ducted versus ductless. Ducted, obviously, you can replace a furnace and AC with a ducted air source heat pump. You need to make sure you're measuring ductwork because you're dealing with much higher airflows with the air source heat pump than you do with a furnace. So you got to make sure you're using a ductulator. If you don't know what a ductulator is, then you don't know how to measure ductwork. So you need to learn that. I'm not going to go into a duct measuring class here, but you need to know how much airflow you're doing or that you have to work with.
But yeah, this is
Lower
part
air
of that
temperatures.
initial walkthrough and also that customer interaction part too, where you're asking them where are the colder areas of the home, for example, because you're not going to solve, if that's one of their goals, you're not going to maybe solve that by taking their furnace out, putting a heat pump in, unless you look at that distribution side of it as well.
So a ducted air source heat pump in place of a furnace, sometimes we get lucky and it's a simple swap out. But a lot of the times we have to make modifications. We need more return air. We need more supply air. any number of different reasons why it's not as easy as just in and out.
It's starting to sound like a miracle if you actually get one of these up and running and going.
Yeah. Just some examples. Here's an example of one we didn't have to monkey with the ductwork. We literally just pulled out this old giant oil furnace. We had plenty of ductwork to deal with. We were able to slip it right in, boom, done, Bob's your uncle, and away you go. Ductless and mixed ducted versus ductless. You can zone it. Sometimes they're simpler, sometimes they're not. If you've got a boiler, water to air, air to water systems really aren't there yet, and most hydronic systems require higher temperature water anyway that heat pumps can't deliver. So we tend to put in ductless and smaller, compact, pancake style air handlers when we don't have ductwork in the house to work with. And when I say faster, simpler, that it's usually because we don't need to screw around with ductwork and piping and boiler conversions and stuff like that. That's just a picture of an air handler, like in the other picture. Ceiling cassette, ductless wall unit. Nothing you guys probably haven't seen a million times the last 2 days. Hybrid air source. You can do this with ground source too. It's just a little bit more particular, but an air source heat pump hybrid system is literally exactly that. You take your furnace and you put a coil on it and you connect it to an air source heat pump, and efficiency gains. The heat pump is going to run more efficient at those higher temperatures, so typically that helps balance out the fuel consumption loss, even with natural gas. Propane and oil systems, again, if you go into a house and somebody's got this brand new furnace they just put in, they just spent $8,000 on it, and they're not going to go throwing it away. Okay, are you interested in air conditioning? All right, well, hey, why don't we do this? Why don't we look at a heat pump, a hybrid system, where the heat pump can do a good chunk of the load, and you're not spending on propane, you're saving yourself some money. You're not going to save as much, but you'll definitely save the difference over just a straight air conditioner only. I personally think that every air conditioner installed should be a heat pump. It makes sense to put it in. You just got to make sure you pair the right furnace with the right heat pump, because you can't just throw anything together and pretend it's going to work. Here's an example of a hybrid system. So Make sure you got enough height. Those coils are not short. It's like a 30-inch coil. So we got a high efficient gas furnace. The coil for air conditioning. This particular customer wanted air conditioning. And I basically explained to her the benefits of the heat pump. She liked the idea, so we went in with a hybrid system. Cost per million BTUs, depending on your type of fuel you're using. Obviously, geothermal is going to be the cheapest. Obviously, it just kind of goes up from there. So if you can make geo work, awesome, you're going to save money, but it's not a ton over natural gas and air source. Oh, wow.
We're kind of getting there on time.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm going through. Yeah. Just real quick, annual cost of operations. You guys probably can't see these numbers, but that's a ground source heat pump. That's electric resistance, air source, natural gas, propane, oil. Don't ask me why it didn't sort it on the graph that I made, but it's just how I made it. CO2 emissions, again, the more efficient, the less CO2 emission you're going to deal with. Laundry and cooking, gas cooktops, or gas cooking you replace with induction range or just an electric cooktop. Again, this goes back to, do we have enough electrical capacity in the house? Dryers, there's heat pump dryers that don't vent. They're a lot safer, a lot of fires in the United States are caused by dryer vents. So advantage to a heat pump dryer is, it's a lot safer, a lot more energy efficient, and much cheaper to operate. And then the last thing is how do you maximize your once you electrify that house and make it as efficient as you can? You put solar on the property. You now have net zero living. You're not paying electric. You're not paying for gas. You're not paying for propane. Everything is copacetic. I refer to solar. I'm reading it as I'm talking. I refer to solar as a cherry on the sundae. So when somebody calls us up and says, hey, I want to put up solar, and I walk in and I see they've got this giant propane tank outside and this 30-year-old furnace in the basement, I said, why don't we fix that first? Because that is going to net you more savings and energy than putting solar on to just run your lights and your refrigerator. So this is the last slide. This house right here, we did a bunch of insulation work a few years ago, and we put up solar. Then a few years later, he decided to get rid of his oil boiler, and we put in geothermal back here. And he calls me up another year later and says, hey, Matt, I need more solar. Okay.
More solar.
So we put up more solar. So
you can see how horizontal would work at a site like that, where it's like basically a big open field.
Yeah, this is a real easy one to do. But this is a net zero home. He doesn't pay any money. He saved himself $6,000 year one over fuel oil by putting in geothermal. It's a no-brainer. Questions and discussions?
Do you ever include electric car chargers as part of your electrification package?
Yeah. I didn't have a slide for that, but yes, EV chargers, pretty straightforward, pretty easy to do. But yeah, we do a bunch of those.
We have electricians on staff, so that's pretty easy add-on. Well, we'll hang around if anyone wants to come say hi. But otherwise, enjoy your rides home. Be safe.